So about a month ago, I was scrolling Marketplace, as you do, and a listing popped up for 50 bucks Canadian, and it was just a big box of consoles with no description other than in various states might be used for repair or parts. And as you can see, I've got this cool console wall behind me, and I kind of enjoy collecting nostalgia from my childhood. And I was looking through the photo, just pinching and zooming as much as I could to see what was in there, and I saw through the weeds a little insignia of an original Xbox, which I didn't have one as a kid, but I had access to one as a kid. Classic 90s kids. And I thought it'd be really cool to have one, even if just to set on the display shelf next to the 360 and show off that nostalgia. And if it works, then huge bonus. I also panned around and thought maybe that was an Atari in there, and the PS1 Slim is also super nostalgic, and so I wanted to snag that, especially because it looked like it maybe kind of worked based on the sticky note that was on it in the listing. So I drive out there and grabbed the box. The guy was super nice, said he just had this box sitting in his basement for like 4 years and didn't have the time to deal with it. So I got it home and started unpacking it to see what I had just purchased. And it turns out it had 1.5 NESs, more on that in the video should I get around to fixing those, 2 Super Nintendos and half of a shell of one, the front half of an N64 minus some ports, the PS1 Slim, which we'll be talking about in this video, an Atari 2600, so the hunch was correct, and an original Xbox 1.4 version. So of the ones that I've tested so far, only the PS1 Slim and one of the Super Nintendos actually powers on. The rest are non-functioning, but I have some pretty good ideas as to what will fix them, and so I'll probably cover them in later videos as we document the journey on these weird consoles. But back to the PS1, when I was picking it up, the one console the guy mentioned as we were doing the handoff was that the PS1 does turn on, but it has some graphical issues, and that was indicated by the sticky note on it as well, so I guess he decided to test these and thought he might work through them at some point. Because of that, it sounded easier to get started with instead of the Nintendo consoles, which were straight up missing parts or pins or ports. Subscribe, by the way, to see how I end up fixing those or what I end up doing with them. So I figured I'd start by plugging it in and seeing what it does. Maybe it fixed itself in transport, knocked something back into place, one can hope. And I plugged it in, and sure enough, just the absolute garbage display. It is still visible. I could still see what was going on in the UI, like enough to put in a CD and confirm the disk drive was working, but it was flickering like crazy, black and white, so the video was, as he said, very buggy. So I did enough Googling to be confident that it was maybe fixable, and so I decided to crack it open and see what we saw. I got down to the board and it actually looked really clean, like nothing was visibly corroded or broken kind of thing, but I also saw from research that capacitors, it was kind of hard to tell when they leaked because they were these surface mount ones where the top is pretty solid, but the leaking is like a very mild yellow residue under the cap that you don't really see until you pop it off. And during that research, it revealed that these 2 capacitors near the media port control the video, and those tend to be the ones to replace when you're having issues similar to this. And thankfully, most of those people that have replaced this on other videos just use straight through the hole capacitors instead of buying the special surface mount ones, and I had the capacitors in my big bin of caps already, so off I went. I'm relatively new at soldering, but thankfully I was able to get these caps off without breaking the pads, and then I was able to use a solder wick to get rid of the old solder and clean it up with some isopropyl alcohol. Then prep the pads with some fresh solder, bent the legs of the new caps to kind of lay them in the best way possible so they wouldn't be resting on a chip and be any taller than they needed to be. That way, hopefully the metal plate would sit right when I put it all back together. Soldered them in, tested for continuity, and everything seemed to be pretty solid, so now it's time to test. I plugged it into the TV by the bench, and, well, at least the picture's stable now, but it's still black and white and looking pretty crappy. There was a third capacitor that I didn't touch, but it apparently controls the audio, and when people do these repairs, they seem to replace them in groups of 3, and I thought I heard some kind of whirring when I was testing it on that TV, so I thought, what the heck, I'm already in here, and it only takes a 100 microfarad cap, which I have that as well, so let's just swap that in as well. Fired it up, and exact same thing on the TV. I ended up taking a break, and during that time, just scrolling forums and checking threads where people were complaining about black and white, mostly on either PAL consoles and NTSC TVs, but one guy asked a very good question, which was, are you plugging it into a component-only TV, or are you plugging it into actual RCA ports? And it hit me that when I did the first test, it was on an older TV upstairs that had RCA ports, whereas the one down by the bench had component jacks, and I was just thinking it would do the compatibility thing of, you put the yellow in the corresponding from component, and then the red and white, and then you would get the same effect. I knew it was a bit of a long shot, but considering I didn't want to go and blindly be popping out caps further if it was already fixed on the off chance, I figured what the heck. So I lugged everything upstairs, plugged it into the TV, and crap, I did not expect it to actually work. I actually stared at it for like a good 10 seconds like, it's a color working, correct sounding PlayStation 1. Okay. So got the shell cleaned up, put it back together, and it was time to test a CD because we needed to make sure the disc drive still worked. I didn't have any PS1 games on hand at the time, unfortunately, but this CD of the Larry Boy soundtrack sufficed well, and the CD still played beautifully. So that's one down and quite a few to go in the magic box of consoles. But I'm really excited about this PS1 though, because I've been looking at other videos and I'm probably going to mod chip this guy so that I can do some cool burn CD action, and I'll probably even create my own mod chip using a programmable pick. So be sure to subscribe to see how that goes, or if I just end up breaking this thing in a very entertaining and horrible way. Appreciate you guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.